even people who have 30 years of working experience can have really quite, I mean, CVs that are not great, CVs that really needs help. I
Mm.
prefer shorter CVs, 1 to 3 pages, 3 pages at the very max. And it's just about, the CV is really a tool to just give somebody to say, I need to find out more. And it's just about putting enough to attract somebody's attention to say, I need to talk to this person. It could be something as simple as the structure of the CV. How do you make your CV easily readable? Simple things, bullet points, categorizing responsibilities versus achievements, playing with your margins, white space. How much white space do you have? Too much white space, too many pages. You're not utilizing what is, important real estate. You really want to go through what you've written to say, is this really needed? Is this what makes me a good candidate? It's got to be something that makes you special, something that makes you stand out.
The key thing for me when I'm looking through a CV is obviously the key skills that my client's been looking for, which is why I'd always advise having a summary of your profile at the top, which really highlights the key skills for the job. And I definitely recommend tailoring it to the job that you are applying for. So really looking through those key skills, making sure they're highlighted at the top, trying to highlight as well in your CV that you're passionate about what you do. And often it is good to sort of include key achievements. If they can be quantifiable, that's often great to achieve. Sometimes clients may be looking for sort of specific achievements to include.
I personally love a detailed CV, so I'm actually a really big fan of kind of academic CVs. Obviously, to an extent, you don't necessarily need to include every single publication that you've ever had, because obviously, if you have worked quite extensively in academia, you've done a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of projects. So you don't necessarily need to include all of that information or all of the certifications that you've done and things like that. It's more the impact that you had on those projects that I think really becomes valuable in a CV. So if you've worked as kind of, you were a lead on a project and things like that, making sure that you mention you led this project that focused on working with genomics and things like that, making sure that you identify that you specifically developed this tool for this purpose, and things like that. So I think really kind of giving an emphasis on the impact that you had on the projects, as opposed to just saying, I work with genomics data and I worked on a bioinformatics project. In biotech, the field of immunology in particular, there are kind of keywords that stick out on a CV and things like that. So I personally am a big fan of people including a lot of information in their CVs, on their LinkedIn profiles, because it makes my job a lot easier if I know the kind of area you've worked in and the kind of data that you've dealt with as well. So what I particularly like is if people have a sort of a technical or computational background, if they have kind of a section on their CV of the specific tools they've used, potentially even the efficiency they have in those tools, so sort of expert, beginner, that kind of thing, because essentially that even if you've been exposed to a tool set but not necessarily another, it can be very valuable, because obviously, just as an example, the computational immunologist role that I recently worked on, they were looking for somebody that's worked with immunological assays, which is potentially a bit more of a wet lab application, but also someone that has that computational understanding as well. So essentially, if I was to look at your profile and you had kind of a merge of those two skill sets, but not quite everything for the role, then it could be the case that there's skill sets you can learn. So by identifying things like computational assays and saying you've worked with flow cytometry and things like that, it really helps us identify that you've got that wet lab understanding, even if you haven't necessarily been an expert in that. But yeah, it just kind of makes your profile stand out as well.
You can talk about the classical cover letter. It's nowadays not very common anymore, but people that do it, they tend to have a 1 or 2 page, fully detailed life story of their academic background, and a hiring manager typically will look at it for 10 to 20 seconds and move on. You have a very short time frame where you have to be visible. You scan CVs, you're looking for key qualities, and depending on what position you apply for, it really helps to tailor your CV to the circumstances. And as a recruiter, Having worked all those different types of positions, we can advise a candidate on reframing the CV, on highlighting certain things. Sometimes, yeah, you need help, which again is why you have a recruiter there to kind of help you avoid obvious mistakes.